Whatever had been released from the wires during the instant of switch closure successfully penetrated the shields of glass and of copper. It made no difference. The effect permeated each substance as if the shield were not there at all. Here was an electrical effect which communicated directly through the space without material connections. Radiant electricity. In these several new observations, the phenomena was violating electrostatic charge principles experimentally established by Faraday. Projected electrostatic charges normally spread out over the surface of metallic shields. They do not penetrate metal. This effect had certain very non-electrical characteristics. Tesla was truly mystified by this strange new phenomena and searched the literature for references to its characteristics. In one case, Joseph Henry observed the magnetization of steel needles by a heavy spark discharge. The extraordinary feature of this observation in 1842 lay in the fact that the Leyden jar, whose spark apparently produced the magnetizations, stood on the upper floor of an otherwise electrically impervious building. Brick walls, thick oak doors, heavy stone floors, iron ceilings. Moreover, the steel needles were housed in a vault in the cellar. How did the spark affect such a change through such a natural barrier? Dr. Henry believed that the spark had released special light-like rays, and that these were the penetrating agencies responsible for the magnetizations. A second such account, in 1872, occurred in a high school building in Philadelphia. Elihu Thomson, a physicist instructor, sought to make the sparks of a large Ruhmkorff spark coil more visible for his next lecture. Attaching one pole of the coil to a cold water pipe, he reactivated the coil. Thomson was thrilled to find that the nature of the spark had changed from blue to white. Wishing to amplify this effect, Thomson attached the other pole to a large metal tabletop. Again, reactivating the coil produced a shrieking silver-white spark, entirely visible to anyone who sat in the last row. Wishing to show this to a colleague, Edwin Houston, Thomson made for the door and was abruptly stopped. Touching the brass knob on the otherwise insulated oak door, Thomson received an unexpected sizzling shock. Turning off the Ruhmkorff coil, Thomson found it was possible to stop the effect. Calling for Edwin, he summarized what had occurred, then turned the unit back on. The stinging charge effects returned. The two gentlemen ran around the huge stone, oak, and iron building with insulated metal objects now. Each touch of a penknife or a screwdriver to anything metallic, however distant from the coil or insulated from the floor, produced long and continuous white sparks. The account was written up as a short article in Scientific American later in the same year. In studying each of these two prior observations, events which were separated by some 30 years, Tesla perceived an essential unity with that of his own discovery. Each observation was perhaps a slight variant of the very same phenomenon. Somehow, accidentally, each experimenter had managed to produce the explosive supercharging effect. In the case of Dr. Henry, the explosive bursts occurred in a single flash, electrostatic machines being used to accumulate the initial charge. The second case was peculiar, since it evidenced the sustained and continuous production of supercharging effects. The effect was rare because it obviously required very stringent electrical parameters. Tesla deduced this from the simple fact that the effect was so infrequently observed by experimenters all over the world. In addition, he was quick to remark concerning the anomalous attributes attached to the phenomenon. Tesla knew that despite the extremely penetrating effects in each case, he had secured the only means for achieving the complete and maximum manifestation of supercharging. This was an apparatus with no equal, capable of releasing an aspect of the electrostatic field which others had very apparently not had. Though discovered by Tesla in 1889, the preliminary observation of this effect was published after an intense battery of investigations. The Dissipation of Electricity, published just prior to Christmas of 1892, is the pivotal Tesla lecture. This is the departure point in which Tesla abandons research and development of high-frequency alternating current. Divorcing himself from the field entirely, Tesla describes the shock waves and other effects of impulses. In addition to those physical sensations which he describes in characteristic understatements, Tesla also enlarges upon the gaseous aspects associated with the phenomenon. He observed that the abruptly charged wires in his experiments projected a strange gaseous stream when immersed in an oil bath, a phenomenon which he once thought due entirely to wire-adsorbed gases. He found that the effect could be so continuously produced from a single wire that no amount of ordinary adsorbed gas could possibly supply the flow. Indeed, he was able to produce streams of this kind in oil which so powerfully projected from the charged wire ends that they visibly depressed the oil into a hole, sometimes 2 inches in depth. Tesla began to realize the true nature of this fine issuing gas, which projected from wire ends immersed in oil. He now prepared an extensive series of tests in order to determine the true cause and nature of these shocking air pulses. In his article, Tesla describes the shield permeating shocks as sound waves of electrified air. Nevertheless, he makes a remarkable statement concerning the sound, heat, light, pressure, and shock which he sensed passing directly through copper plates. Okay. Collectively, they imply the presence of a medium of gaseous structure, that is, one consisting of independent carriers capable of free motion. Since air was obviously not this medium, to what was he referring? Further in the article, he clearly states that besides the air, another medium is present. Through successive experimental arrangements, Tesla discovered several facts concerning the production of this effect. First, the cause was undoubtedly found in the abruptness of charging. It was in the switch closure, the very instant of closure and break, which thrust the effect out into space. The effect time. Second, found no reversal of current was permissible, else the effect would not manifest. In this, Tesla made succinct remarks describing the role of capacity in the spark radiative circuit. He found that the effect was powerfully strengthened when placing a capacitor between the disruptor and the dynamo. While providing a tremendous power to the effect, the dielectric of the capacitor also served to protect the dynamo windings. The effect could also be greatly intensified to new and more powerful levels by raising the voltage, quickening the switch make-break rate, and shortening the actual time of switch closure. Thus far, Tesla employed rotating contact switches to produce his unidirectional impulses. When these mechanical impulse systems failed to achieve the greatest possible effects, Tesla sought a more automatic and powerful means. He found this automatic switch in several electrical arc dischargers. The high voltage output of a DC generator was applied to twin conductors through his new arc mechanism, a very powerful permanent magnet sitting crosswise to a discharge path. The discharge arc was automatically and continually blown out by this magnetic field. Imperative toward obtaining the desired rare effect, the capacitor and its connected wire lines had to be so chosen as to receive and discharge the acquired electrostatic charge in a unidirectional staccato fashion. The true Tesla circuit very much resembles a pulse jet, where no back pressure ever stops the onrushing flow. Electrostatic charge rises to a maximum and is discharged much more quickly. The constant application of high voltage dynamo pressure to the circuit ensures that the continual successions of charge, rapid discharge, are obtained. It is then, and only then, that the Tesla effect is observed. Pulses literally flow through the apparatus from the dynamo. The capacitor, disruptor, and its attached wire lines behave as a flutter valve. The high voltage dynamo remains the true electrostatic source in the apparatus. This is a fact well appreciated by Tesla, who disliked the painful radiant effects proceeding into space. It was evident that the dynamo had somehow been modified by the addition of these pulsing valve circuits. The dynamos being used provided deadly voltages capable of killing a man. The valve circuits were forcing a strange radiance of those deadly field energies. Somehow, the dynamo energy was being expanded into space with dangerous and painful force. But how? By what mysterious and provocative means was this condition established? The result of this experimental series fixed a new concept in Tesla's mind. Tesla had, of course, realized the implications of this mysterious shocking field effect. This was radiant electricity. Tesla first conducted elaborate and extensive investigations in order to comprehend the exact nature of this new electrical effect. Tesla realized that this strange shocking field actually radiated through space from the impulse apparatus. If this was electrostatic energy, it was more intense and more penetrating than any electrostatic field he had ever observed. If this was merely a shuttered electrostatic field, why then was its strength so very intensified? Tesla began to believe that he had discovered a new electrical force, not simply a treatment of an existing force. It is for this reason that he often described the effect as electrodynamic or more electrostatic. By properly adjusting the inherent circuit parameters, Tesla learned how to produce an extremely rapid series of unidirectional impulses on demand. When the impulses were short, abrupt, and precise in their successions, Tesla found that the shocking effect could permeate very large volumes of space with apparently no loss of intensity. He also found that the shocking effect penetrated sizable metal shields and most insulators with ease. Developing a means for controlling the number of impulses per second, as well as the intermittent time intervals between each successive impulse, he began discovering a new realm of effects. Each impulse duration gave its own peculiar effects. Able to feel the stinging shocks, though shielded at a distance of nearly 50 feet from his apparatus, Tesla recognized at once that a new potential for electrical power transmission had been revealed to him. Tesla was first to understand that electrical shock waves represented a new means for transforming the world, even as his polyphase system had already done. Tesla fully intended to disclose his discoveries to the world at large. Radiant electricity had special characteristics of which the scientific world had no knowledge. Working with a simple but powerful embodiment of his original apparatus, Tesla found that radiant electricity could induce powerful electrical effects at a distance. These effects were not alternations, not alternating waves. They were longitudinal waves, composed of successive shocking waves. The advance of each shocking wave, followed by short neutral zones, together comprised the radiant field. Vectorial components of these shock wave successions were always unidirectional. The shuddering shock waves were capable of forcing charge in the direction of their propagation. Objects placed near this device became powerfully electrified, retaining a single charge sign for many minutes after the magnetic disruptor had been deactivated. Tesla found it possible to amplify these single charge effects by a simple asymmetrical alignment of the magnetic disruptor. By placing the magnetic disruptor closer to one or the other side of the charging dynamo, either force positive or force negative vectors could be selected and projected. Thus, charge could be projected into or drawn from any object in the field space. This was a new electrical force. Tesla realized more than ever that he was in unknown territory. The fact that these radiant forces traveled as light-like rays distinguished them from the electromagnetic waves of Maxwell. Tesla wished to determine the effect of gradually decreasing impulse durations, a job that required the greatest skill and precaution. Tesla knew that he would be exposing himself to mortal danger. Controlling the rapidity of current blowout in the magnetic DC arc, Tesla released a new spectrum of light-like energies throughout his large gallery space. These energetic species were like no other which the world has ever seen since. Tesla found that the impulse duration alone defined the effect of each distinct spectrum. These effects were completely distinctive, endowed with strange additional qualities never purely experienced in nature. Trains of impulses, each exceeding 0.1 milliseconds in duration, produced pain and mechanical pressure. In this radiant field, objects visibly vibrated and even moved as the force field drove them along. Thin wires exploded into sudden bursts of the radiant field. Pain and physical movement ceased when impulses of 100 microseconds or less were produced. With impulses of 1 microsecond duration, strong physiological heating was sensed. Further decreases in impulse duration brought spontaneous illuminations capable of filling rooms and vacuum globes with white light. At these impulse frequencies, Tesla was able to stimulate the appearance of effects which are normally admixed among the electromagnetic energies inherent in sunlight. Shorter impulses produced cool, room-penetrating breezes with an accompanying uplift in mood and awareness. There were no limits in this progression towards impulses of diminished duration. None of these impulse energies could be duplicated through the use of high-frequency harmonic alternations. Few could produce these effects because so few understood the absolute necessity of observing those parameters set by Tesla. These facts have been elucidated by Eric Dollard, who also successfully obtained the strange and distinct effects claimed by Tesla. By 1890, after a period of intense experimentation and design development, Tesla summarized the components necessary for the practical deployment of a radiant electrical power distribution system. Tesla had already discovered the wonderful fact that impulse durations of 100 microseconds or less could not be sensed and would do no physical harm. He planned to use these in his power broadcasts. Furthermore, shocking waves of 100 microsecond duration passed through all matter, a fitting form of electrical energy to broadcast through a power-hungry city. Tesla made a most startling discovery the same year, when he placed a long, single-turn copper helix near his magnetic disruptor. The coil, some 2 feet in length, did not behave as did solid copper pipes and other objects. The thin-walled coil became ensheathed in an envelope of white sparks. Undulating from the crown of this coil were very long and fluidic silver-white streamers, soft discharges which appeared to have been considerably raised in voltage. These effects were greatly intensified when the helical coil was placed within the disruptor wire circle. Inside this shock zone, the helical coil was surrounded in a blast which hugged onto its surface and rode up the coil up to its upper end. It seemed as though the shock wave actually pulled away from surrounding space to cling to the coil surface, a strange, attractive preference. The shock wave flowed over the coil at right angles to the windings, an unbelievable effect. The sheer length of the discharges leaping from the helix crown was incomprehensible. With the disruptor discharge jumping 1 inch in its magnetic housing, the white flimmering discharges rose from the helix to a measured length of over 2 feet. This discharge equaled the very length of the coil itself. It was an unexpected and unheard of transformation. Here was an action more nearly electrostatic in nature, although he knew that academes would not comprehend this term when used in this situation. Electrostatic energy did not fluctuate, as did his shock waves. The explosive shock wave had characteristics unlike any other electrical machine in existence. Yet Tesla stated that the shock wave, during the brief instant in which it made its explosive appearance, more nearly resembled an electrostatic field than any other known electrical manifestation. Just as in electrostatic friction machines, where current and magnetism are negligible, a very energetic field component fills space in radiating lines. This dielectric field normally launches through space in a slow growth as charges are gathered. Here was a case where a DC generator provided the high voltage. This voltage charged an insulated hoop of copper, growing to its maximum value. If all values in the circuit were properly balanced, in the manner prescribed by Tesla, a sudden charge collapse would then occur. This collapse was necessarily very much shorter than the interval required to charge the loop. The collapse comes when the magnetic disruptor extinguishes the arc. If the circuit is properly structured, no backrush alternations ever occur. This unidirectional succession of charge-discharge impulses causes a very strange field to expand outward, one which vaguely resembles a shuddering or staccato electrostatic field. But these terms did not satisfactorily describe the conditions actually measured around the apparatus, a powerful radiant effect exceeding all expectable electrostatic values. Actual calculation of these discharge ratios proved impossible. Implementing the standard magneto-inductive transformer rule, Tesla was unable to account for the enormous voltage multiplication effects. Conventional relationships failing, Tesla hypothesized that the effect was due entirely to radiant transformation rules, obviously requiring empirical determination. Subsequent measurements of discharge lengths and helix attributes provided the necessary new mathematical relationships. He had discovered a new induction law, one where radiant shock waves actually auto-intensified when encountering segmented objects. The segmentation was the key to releasing the action. Radiant shock waves encountered a helix and flashed over the outer skin from end to end. This shock wave did not pass through the windings of the coil at all, treating the coil surface as an aerodynamic plane. A consistent increase in electrical pressure was measured along the coil surface. Indeed, Tesla stated that voltages could often be increased at an amazing 10,000 volts per inch of axial coil surface. This meant that a 24-inch coil could absorb radiant shock waves, which initially measured 10,000 volts, with a subsequent maximum rise to 240,000 volts. Such transformations of voltage were unheard of with apparatus of this volume and simplicity. Tesla further discovered that the output voltages were mathematically related to the resistance of the turns in the helix. High resistance meant higher voltage maxima. He began referring to his disruptor line as his special primary, and to the helical coil placed within the shock zone as his special secondary. But he never intended anyone to equate these terms with those referring to magnetoelectric transformers. This discovery was indeed completely different from magnetoinduction. There was a real and measurable reason why he could make this outlandish statement. There was an attribute which completely baffled Tesla for a time. Tesla measured a zero current condition in these long copper secondary coils. He determined that the current which should have appeared was completely absent. Pure voltage was rising with each inch of the coil surface. Tesla consistently referred to his electrostatic induction laws, a principle which few comprehended. Tesla called the combined disruptor and secondary helix a transformer. Tesla transformers are not electromagnetic devices. They use radiant shock waves and produce pure voltage without current. Each transformer conducted a specific impulse duration with specific force. Therefore, each had to be tuned by adjusting the disruptor to that specific impulse duration. Adjusting the arc distance provided this control factor. Once each transformer was tuned to its own special response rate, impulses could flow smoothly through the system, like gas flowing through a pipe. Finding the gas dynamic analogies and applications indeed provided him with a consistent record of successful assessments of these regards. Tesla began considering whether or not the white flame discharges, so different from anything that he had ever seen, might not be a gaseous manifestation of electrostatic force. There were certainly abundant experimental instances in which a purely gaseous nature, so unlike anything electrical, was being clearly made manifest. The manner in which the radiant shock wave traveled over the wire coilings in white flimmering laminar sheets brought a new revelation of thought. Voltage pulses traversed the secondary surface like a gas pulse under increasing constriction. Until reaching the free end of the coil, these gaseous pulses flowed over the copper surface rather than through it. Tesla referred to this specific manifestation as the skin effect. In this, the discharge greatly resembles the manner in which gases move over surfaces aerodynamically. Furthermore, whenever a metal point was connected to the upper terminal of one of his transformers, the stream became more directive. It behaved just like a stream of water in a pipe. When the white flimmering stream was directed at distant metal plates, it produced electronic charges. This charge production could be measured as amperage, current at the reception site. In transit, however, no such amperage existed. Amperage appeared only when intercepted. Eric Dollard has stated that the space surrounding Tesla impulse transformers so surge with these streams that the interception currents can reach several hundred or even several thousand amperes. But what was this mysterious stream composed? Tesla struggled with the doubt that these discharge phenomena might be ordinary electricity behaving in extraordinary ways. But did electricity indeed have a smooth, soft, and flimmering nature? The electricity with which he was familiar was shocking, hot, burning, deadly, piercing, stinging, all the attributes of an irritant. But this discharge phenomena, whether cool or warm to the touch, was soft and gentle, and it would not kill. Even the manner in which the pulse exploded as bright white discharges of greatly transformed voltage suggested the way in which gases behave when released from their confinements under pressure. These reflective meditations convinced Tesla that this effect was not purely electrical in nature. Closely examining the white flames, Tesla realized why there was no measurable electric current in the crown of these activated coils. The normal heavy charge carriers, electrons, could not travel as quickly as the radiant pulse itself. Choked in the metallic lattice of the coil, electrons became immobile. The radiant pulse which moved over the coil's surface was therefore not electronic in nature. Additionally, Tesla discovered an amazing phenomena which removed all doubt concerning the true nature of the energetic carriers at work in his apparatus. Tesla arranged a very heavy U-shaped copper bus bar connecting both legs directly to his disruptor primary. Across the legs of this U-shaped bus bar were placed several incandescent lamps. The arrangement was a very evident short circuit. The lamps were illuminated to a bright, cold, white light while being shorted by a heavy copper shunt. Uncharacteristic of particulate current electricity, the bright but cold lamps revealed that another energetic current was indeed flowing through the short circuits. Those who observed this experiment did not expect it to perform any function save the incineration of the disruptor circuit and possibly of the dynamo itself. Instead of this, witnesses beheld a marvel. The lamps lit to an uncommon brightness. In this simple demonstration, Tesla was illustrating but one of his many evidences. Electronic charges would prefer the least resistant circuit, rejecting the incandescent bulbs for the copper path. The circuit in this situation chose to conform to a contradictory principle. Perhaps this was true because the current were not electrical. Tesla repeatedly used this demonstration to evidence the fractionation of currents electronic from currents neutral. A single question remained, the answer to which would provide him with the essential information needed to create a new technology. What so separated or fractioned the diverse mobile carriers in his transformer? It was the geometric configuration of the coil, which inadvertently separated each component. Electrons were blocked from flowing through the wire length, while the radiant pulse was released over the coil's surface as a gaseous pulse. Electrons could not drift through the wire, but during each impulse period, they were blocked by the line resistance. Thus, the gaseous mobile carriers were released to flow outside the wire, a pulse which traveled along the outer coil surface from end to end. Here then was evidence that electrical discharges were indeed composed of several simultaneous mobile species. Tesla now comprehended why his first high-frequency alternating currents never evidenced these powerful actions. It was the abruptness, the violence of the impulsive discharge which gave free mobility to this unsuspected gaseous component. Impulses, unidirectional impulses, were the only means by which these potentials could be unlocked. Alternations were absolutely useless in this regard. Moreover, because alternations could not unleash the secondary gas dynamic component, it remained an unusable and pitifully weak means. Tesla forever viewed his high-frequency alternating devices as failed projects. This has great bearing on his highly critical views of Marconi and all others like him who pursued high-frequency alternating wave radio. Tesla began to study a topic which has found more enemies and critics than any this century. Tesla, with great interest now, began researching the ether. Tesla came to believe that dielectric fields were actually composed of ether streams. Theoretically, then, one could derive limitless energy by trapping and conducting a naturally occurring dielectric field line. The problem was that no ordinarily accessible material could resist the ether enough to derive any momentum from it. With a stream so rare as to pass through all known materials, the kinetic energy inherent in dielectric field lines would remain an elusive energy source. Tesla believed he may have found the secret to tapping this energy, but it would not require an ordinary kind of matter. Tesla viewed voltage as streams of ether under various states of pressure. Raising these stresses could produce enormous ether streams, where the observed voltage would then be extremely high and luminous. This was the very condition which Tesla had come to believe had been established in his transformers. In fact, Tesla repeatedly stated that his transformers affected powerful movements in the ether. In one truly mystifying experiment, indicative of these comprehensions, Tesla describes the production of very rapid impulse trains with the subsequent production of a cool, misty white streamers extending a yard into space. These were cool to the touch and harmless. If electrical in nature, they would necessarily have been several million volts in potential. Their harmlessness is coupled with their sinuous nature, one completely unlike electrical currents. Indeed, to understand Tesla technology, one must eliminate the notion that electrons are the working fluid in his radiant electric systems. With the lower coil end connected directly to the dynamo, high voltage ether streams were projected from the upper terminal. When describing each of his relevant patents in this new technology, Tesla forever spoke of light-like rays and the natural medium. The first term refers to the tightly constricted ether streams, which are propelled from his transformers along infinitesimal ray lines, and the latter refers to the all-pervading ether atmosphere in which his technology operated. It is impossible to comprehend Teslian technology apart from the controversial topic concerning the ether. Many analysts will reject the concept without first seeking out and discovering the proofs which have been established by experimenters such as Eric Dollard. Tesla addressed the notion that ether streams were being pulled through his transformers, drawn in at higher natural pressure, and accelerated to a sharp electrical discharge. As electrical systems, Tesla apparatus cannot completely be understood or explained. One must view Teslian technology as an ether gas technology, one capable of being explained only through gas dynamic analogies. It was now easy to understand how such projected rays, ether gas streams under high pressure, could penetrate metals and insulators alike. These powerful rays often could penetrate certain materials with inexplicable efficiency. Electricity did not perform these wonders. Tesla also now understood why these discharge streams produced their smoothly hissing sounds, visibly appearing like gas jets under high pressure. Ether gas under pressure. Tesla was completely mystified. He had successfully released the mystery current, normally suppressed and bound in electronic charge carriers. Unidirectional, impulsive discharges of high voltage and abrupt durations released them. What other potentials would ether gas technology release? The original cylindrical coils were quickly replaced with cone-shaped coils. With these bizarre geometries, Tesla was able to focus the gas dynamic component, which now rose up like a jet of hissing white light from the coil tip. Tesla recognized that these discharges, white, spectacular, and awe-inspiring, actually represented lost power. A power broadcast station had to evenly disperse the energetic radiance in all directions. Flame-like discharges caused the available power to undulate in space. This would produce unpredictable power drops at long distances. Consumers would not receive a reliable and consistent stream of energy. If his power transformer was to operate with highest broadcast efficiency, these flame-like discharges necessarily had to be suppressed. But suppressing these excessive ether jets proved problematic. Tesla found that the white flimmering streams were absorbed in large capacity volumes, masses in which the streams were absorbed, filtered, and expelled. The use of copper spheres atop his transformers forced the streams sufficiently apart to suppress the white flame. Power was now evenly dispersed throughout space as required. But a new problem appeared. The copper spheres, being impacted by the high voltage streams, which were composed now of where the forces were now conduct, expelled electronic components. These appeared along with the radiance, producing truly dangerous conditions. The problem was stimulated by conduction, a case where the spherical copper ball was impacted by ether throughout its volume. The white flimmering streams permeated the copper and expelled electrons. These contaminants concentrated their escape from the system as harmful blue stinging dartlets. By comparison, the white flame discharge was smooth and harmless glow. Comparing the two species, Tesla recognized the difference in charge carriers. Tesla was once nearly killed when one such dartlet jumped 3 feet through the air and struck him directly over the heart. The copper spheres had to be removed and replaced by another dispersion component. Metals were apparently of no utility in this case, being natural reservoirs of electrons. Tesla eventually suggested that metals manufactured electrons when impacted with these special flame-white currents, the carriers in the white flames becoming concentrated within the metallic lattice. He had already observed